In this try it out example, which you can follow along with, I'm going to add a shortcut to my Internet Explorer favorites. Now, a few things have to be done in group policy. The first thing I'm going to do is create a new group policy object, and I'm going to name it sales website. I already have an OU named sales, so I'm going to link that GPO to the sales OU. I'm going to go to preferences under my user configuration when I edit that group policy object, and I'm going to add a shortcut that points to the URL https rtsnetworking.com, and I'm actually going to name it RTS. So we'll see there's a spot for the name, then you define the URL the name resolves to. And I'm going to use item level targeting, and I'm going to target this specifically to the sales users group. So we should know what this actually does. When I create the GPO and the GPO is linked to the sales OU, it applies to objects only under the sales OU. So if I do this under user configuration, at that moment, every user in the sales OU would actually have that rtsnetworking.com apply. But once I filter it to the sales users group, now your user account still has to be under the sales OU, and you have to be a member of the sales users group. Both of those things must be true. So that's what we're doing in group policy itself. Outside of that, I'm going to verify my user Bob Ross that we created earlier is a member of the sales users group. He should be. I did add him earlier. We'll just verify that he's a member of that group. And I'm also going to make Bob Ross a member of domain admins. Now, it's two reasons I do that. One, we will use Bob as an administrator in some future exercises. So I'm going to make him a domain admin now. And the other, you cannot log into a server with just a standard user account. So Bob, to log into our RTS Serve 1, where we're going to have these settings apply, Bob has to be a member of one of these privileged groups. So we're just going to use domain admins for that. So that is not directly related to group policy, just something that we're going to do so everything works for us in future exercises. Once that's verified in Active Directory, I'm going to sign into RTS Serve 1, and I'm going to log in as Bob Ross. We're going to go to Internet Explorer, and I'm going to verify that RTS is actually in favorites in the Internet Explorer. Now let's configure all those settings. Back on my machine, I'm going to pull up my Hyper-V Manager. Now, if you don't already have this open, you can just right-click and connect, but I believe I already have my virtual machines open. So this is my domain controller. The first thing I said I wanted to do was create a group policy object. So I'm going to go to Tools, Group Policy Management. That opened down here on my taskbar. I'm going to expand my RTS networking, expand my domain, and we'll keep expanding. I have this sales OU that shows up. So I'm going to right-click that, and I'm going to create a GPO and link it to this location all at one time. So I'm going to choose that. And I said I was going to name it Sales Website. And I'll just click OK for that. So that's our GPO created and linked. Now I'm just going to edit the GPO for the setting we just described. I'm going to put that in full screen there. But under my user configuration, I'm going to go to Preferences. And under Preferences, I'm going to expand Window Settings. That's where this shortcut is. So for the shortcut, I'm just going to right-click New Shortcut. Now this gives me a few options. If I look at Action, you could update if this is an existing shortcut you already had. If you wanted to delete this, say if you had already created it, now you want to come back and remove it, you could delete it. If you already have this defined and you simply wanted to overwrite it, you could replace. But we want to create because this is going to be a brand new for us. So I'm going to choose Create. For the name, I'm just going to name it RTS, as we said. The target type, you have three options. File System Object. That would be like a folder. If I wanted to create a folder on your computer, I could use that and specify the location on your computer that it would be created. URL, it's going to be a website. That's what I'll actually use. And if I wanted this associated with an application, I could choose Shell Object. but I'm going to choose URL. The location. This is where it shows up within the operating system. So if you were creating a folder, you could put the folder on the desktop if you wanted. If you were doing a shell object, you could have an application link show up on the start menu or something like that. I want to put this in my Internet Explorer favorites, so we'll choose Explorer favorites here. They just dropped the word internet, but that's what it is. And now I'm going to specify the URL, which is https rtsnetworking.com. Now, you could choose an icon for this. You wouldn't choose one for a URL in your favorites normally. But if you were creating folders or something like that, they have just several icons that you could actually choose from if you had any interest in doing that. I don't, so I'm just going to use the default icon. And you could also define a shortcut key if you wanted some key to actually invoke this. Usually you would do that with an application. So we're not doing icon or shortcut keys. I'm just going to click OK. That is created. But if we stop right now, it's going to apply to every user in the sales organizational unit. We said that's not what we wanted. We want to filter it. So if we just open this again, if I go to the Common tab, Item Level Targeting, and if I choose New Item, Security Group is in this list. When I choose Security Group, I'm just going to click the little ellipsis here and browse. I'm just going to type SA and check names. And it found sales computers and sales users. Sales users is what I want. So I'll just click OK. It's a lot of OKs. Now I can see that this is named RTS. It will create a shortcut in favorites. The target is going to be https rtsnetworking.com. And we know we are using item level targeting, so it only applies to the sales users group. Now, the last thing I need to do, if I go back to Server Manager, I'm going to go to Tools and pull up Active Directory Users and Computers, and we're going to search for Bob Ross. So Bob Ross is in my Sales OU. I'm going to right-click Bob Ross and go to Properties of his user account. And I'm going to choose this Member Of. So right now I can see Bob is a member of domain users. All users you ever create automatically become a member of domain users. So that's not a concern. Bob is also a member of sales users because we added him to that earlier. I'm also going to add Bob to the domain admins. So I'm just going to click Add. And I'm just going to type domain AD and check names, and it'll complete that. So domain admins, and we'll just OK that. So now Bob is going to be an administrator as well. If I minimize my RTS DC1, if we get out of that for a moment, on RTS Serve 1, I'm going to sign in as B. Ross. And I'm actually going to put that in full screen. And I want to enter my password. Now, if I pull up Internet Explorer, I'm going to click on my favorites here, the little star. You can see RTS is in the list. And when I hover over it, it has the URL https rtsnetworking.com. So we know that completely worked. That setting processed out through group policy. Now, to look at that again, in a different context, I'm going to go back to that setting in the group policy. So back on my domain controller, I'm going to go back to that GPO. So this is where we just had this created. Now, let's say you no longer want this to apply. Well, the first thing you would think, I would just come here, right-click, and delete. No, that would be wrong. If you do that, this setting no longer applies to your users, but anyone that it's already applied to, they would just keep this setting forever. So it would not undo it on any of those machines. If I actually wanted to remove this rtsnetworking.com, if I want to remove that out of your favorites, what I would do, I don't actually delete the policy itself or the setting. Instead, I open it. And under action, I will change that to delete and OK. The next time group policy gets processed, it's going to see that this has been deleted. Now, you can tell it's been deleted here because it has the red X on it. That just means it's set to delete, and under action, it even says delete. Well, now, if we go back to RTS Serve 1, now I'm still signed in as Bob Ross, and we just saw the RTS favorite here. I'm just going to go to Run and type GP Update. That's going to reach out and process all our group policy changes. And we expect to see that RTS disappear from our favorites list. Now, just to make sure this screen is not just static, I'm going to close that and just open Internet Explorer again. Sometimes those changes don't automatically get reflected if you have the window already open because the window itself may not go through a refresh. But now if I click favorites, you'll see RTS is gone. So we know our GPO worked to create it, then it worked to actually delete that setting. So I suggest you try that out on your own virtual environment just to get a feel for how these policies work and how these settings actually work. Pretty interesting.